Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start off our meeting today with our discernment prayer. We usually pray it on the third Sunday at Mass, but decided we'd do it right before our presentation today. So let's join together as we pray this. Loving and ever faithful God, with gratitude for our graced history, we turn to you for guidance and wisdom as we are discerning our future path. Open our hearts and make us one in faith and loving service, so we might accept the challenges we face as we continue to be attentive to the needs of our community. May we, the parishioners of St. Boniface, St. Mary's, and Blessed Sacrament, like our ancestors, walk in faith toward a future we cannot fully see. As we journey together, may we always remember our commitment to you and to one another. Trusting in your care and promise of new life, may we always feel your guidance and strength. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for staying after for this presentation. My name's Amy Vogel. I'm chair of our Parish Pastoral Council, and we have a number of council members here. I'd like to ask them to stand, and I will introduce them to you. So we have Liz Clark, Heather Scalzo, Shirley Cirillo, who's also a trustee of St. Mary's, Dave Stewart, Tim Smilnek, Corey Wirt, Mario Montalvo, and I think I got everybody. So we are a portion of your Parish Pastoral Council. Next slide, please. And this is the full list of your Parish Pastoral Council. Go ahead, next slide. We're here to share with you the work that we've been doing, and listen. We want to listen to what you have to say. We really want your feedback. The council has been working diligently on preparing different scenarios, a one church, two church, and three church, and that's what we will be sharing with you, our best thinking so far. In the bulletin 2 weeks ago, there was a scope of work timeline. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that, and it shows what we've been doing that's bringing us to today. And I believe there are copies still available in the back. This is just a small excerpt of it, but I do want to point out in January, we engaged a consultant, the Cabot Group, to go through all of our buildings, all 14 buildings on the 3 campuses, and give us an idea of how sellable they are. We think we're in a great hot real estate market, but apparently there are a glut of churches up for repurposing and sale. So what we learned from the Cabot Group is if we do choose to sell off some of our properties, it could take 5 to 7 years before we see that. What could be done for our churches would best be served by another religious community coming in to do it. The 2 most sellable things, the Talbot House, which is next door to Blessed Sacrament, and the parking lot over here at Jiva. So the council took all that into consideration, but knew that we needed to keep moving forward with our scenarios, with what we're looking to do for the future. So we, with the Cabot report in mind, we have put together some different ideas. Next slide, please. These are all the buildings. This was shared when we did the facilities presentation a year or so ago. These are all of our buildings by campus, and it shows under St. Mary's, the parking lot is leased to Excellis, and the bell tower lease has ended. I did neglect to say we will have time for questions and answers at the end. Next slide. I don't really like reading slides, but I am going to read this one. Here are some disclaimers about this presentation. As I mentioned, a variety of configurations were developed and considered. The 3 scenarios being presented are those that receive the largest support of council as being the most viable from each configuration. Prior to the increased giving effort last spring, the Southeast Rochester Catholic Community has been experiencing a 10% decline in attendance and collections. It is not uncommon, though, with this renewed increase, that giving would fade after a year. So we need to keep an eye on that and see if that trend pans out or if the increased giving is sustained. The projected capital and non-capital costs that are shared in this presentation were generated between 2021 and 2022. They don't reflect inflation, supply chain issues, and that may increase the numbers by possibly 10 to 20%. And we recognize that the numbers are getting a little old at this point. And our ultimate goal is to develop a plan for our future that's supported by a consensus within our parish. That plan would need to be reviewed and approved by the bishop in consultation with various other diocesan entities. And the uncertain timing of the resolution of the bankruptcy reorganization and the impending retirement or replacement of Bishop Matano may delay diocesan action should we reach a point of submitting a plan for approval. So I want to reiterate, these are not recommendations. This is our best thinking. These are what we came up with for ideas of what our future could look like. And we are now bringing them to you to get your feedback. Someone may have the best idea that none of us thought of. I actually really hope someone does. But before we get into that, before we get into the nitty-gritty, happy St. Patrick's Day. I understand I told a joke last week and it's been stolen. So if you know the punchline, keep quiet. Why should you never iron a shamrock? You don't want to press your luck. All right, let's go to the next slide. We did present an abbreviated version of this to Finance Council, and they had suggested that we include some of the costs of savings, potential savings, and potential expenses. But this one is the total summary of costs by campus, so the capital cost, non-capital cost, and the carrying costs, which are the heat, the insurance, the day-to-day expenses. Those have been updated with new numbers. Next slide, please. So the first scenario maintains all three churches, Blessed Sacrament, St. Boniface, and St. Mary's. One of the St. Mary's and St. Boniface would be retained with one serving as the parish office with meeting rooms and faith formation classrooms, and the other would be used as a priest residence. That's for the rectories. The school buildings at Blessed Sacrament and St. Boniface will be retained if rental income can offset the 10-year capital cost projections and carrying costs. The Talbot House on Oxford Street would be sold. The convent at St. Boniface would be sold, though it may be a long-term goal due to limited parking and access, and especially if we have to deal with the city and zoning. Blessed Sacrament Convent, rectory, and garages would be sold. And this plan, the group that drafted this plan felt it would be financially sustainable for 10 years when factoring in collections, rental income, dividends from investments, etc. Next slide. What are the benefits to keeping three churches? It maintains a visible Catholic presence in all three neighborhoods. Parishioners can continue to worship where they choose. It maintains a downtown presence as city center grows its residential. We all see the apartment buildings going up. And it's least disruptive to existing ministries. It would involve moving only faith formation and the parish office to either St. Mary's or St. Boniface Rectory. It keeps most ministries where they currently work. It does not reduce existing parking. It would require limited renovations needed to convert the rectory to offices, meeting rooms, etc. It retains the real estate and buildings for future growth, including the largest of the three churches. The men's club and supper program, which address social needs and build community, would be an asset to future consolidations. And it balances the resources of active ministry and building maintenance. Next, please. What are the downsides? It does not address ADA bathroom renovations, ADA lifts, ramps at the 3 sites, which would add a chunk of change. An almost $2 million capital campaign would be needed to cover this 10-year plan, minus the proceeds from any sale of buildings, but as I said, that could be a few years down the road. No additional parking is added. Our dear Father John and the shared staff would still have to travel among 3 worship sites, and it could limit to only 1 Mass per church on the weekend. And it would become increasingly challenging if our pastor were tapped to take on another parish. The 3-site model would need to be reduced further if there is attrition with any donors, and it will not consolidate easily with existing parish clusters again as the number of priests decline. And it doesn't include a gathering space or multi-purpose community space for larger gatherings. Next slide, please. These numbers are estimates, but provide a good idea of savings and expenses associated with this scenario. So you can see, if you look along the totals, it would still be a $2.5 million capital expense with potential savings of almost $375,000. Non-capital expense, $400,000. Non-capital savings, over $200,000. And again, these are estimates, but give us a sense of what we're looking at. Next, please. 2 churches. The group that drafted this proposal looked at all different configurations. So they looked at St. Boniface, St. Mary's, St. Boniface, Blessed Sacrament, St. Mary's, Blessed Sacrament. All were reviewed with the same lens. And the consensus is the model 2-church model that could work best is to retain St. Mary's and St. Boniface as primary church worship sites. Discontinue the use of Blessed Sacrament as a primary church. We would convert the Blessed Sacrament Church into space for parish offices, meeting rooms, a community center, and a chapel. Retain the Blessed Sacrament School, raise or sell the Blessed Sacrament Convent and Rectory, sell the Talbot House, and keep the primary priest residence at St. Mary's. The benefits next, thank you. The 2 churches at St. Mary's and St. Boniface are more readily accessible for persons with disabilities, and they have better sight lines between the pews and the sanctuary. Closing Blessed Sacrament as a church, but retaining it as a chapel and parish center would allow for some continuity of spiritual presence and community for the neighborhood and longtime parishioners. It allows for continuation of most of our ministries in their current sites. Faith formation could possibly occur at the school at St. Boniface or in the Dugan Center. And according to the Cabot report, the convent rectory buildings at Blessed Sacrament represent excellent multi-family redevelopment opportunities. And the Talbot House could be sold if desired. What are the benefits? I just did those, sorry. Cons. What are the drawbacks? Parking at St. Mary's. We have plenty of parking with the surface lot, on street. We have Excelis ramp and the public ramps. However, they're the most physically distant parking from the church. And we would likely need to raise the rectory or convent to create more parking, which would also increase expense. The financial sustainability, that it reduces the church worship sites to 2, but still retains the Blessed Sacrament Church and school buildings, which are major cost centers. This option does not meaningfully reduce our community's financial expenditures, which are currently exceeding our revenue. Selling the Blessed Sacrament campus in its entirety would reduce our expenditures, but disrupt our operations and ministries. And it's less than ideal to have St. Boniface and St. Mary's be our 2 churches, but the community center and parish offices off-site at Blessed Sacrament. Okay. Next, please. Again, these are savings realized, potential expense estimates for the two-church configuration. All right, next, one church. Again, each church was looked at individually with the same lens. And the consensus of council is that the most viable option is retaining only the Blessed Sacrament campus. Again, we considered three worship sites individually. The Blessed Sacrament campus is a more traditional church. It preserves the two largest ministries, our $100,000 Next to New Sale and the supper program, which distributes 75 meals 5 nights a week to those in need. It would involve renovating the church with better pews and seating layout, space for a children's room, choir space, gathering space, and bringing it into ADA compliance. Renovate the Talbot House for a priest residence with the addition of a garage, and then dispose of the convent and rectory, use that site for parking or potentially a parish center. What are the benefits? Right now, Blessed Sacrament School is getting market value rent from the Inova Girls Academy. It also has the biggest footprint, the Blessed Sacrament campus. It's close to the highway and commuters and adjacent to a bus line. Retaining Blessed Sacrament, again, preserves space for the supper program and the Next to New Sale. And we retain the church that usually generates the highest attendance and biggest collections. What are the drawbacks? Blessed Sacrament has the highest capital and carrying costs. Finding space for faith formation will be a challenge as the Inova Girls Academy Charter School expands to occupy the upper 2 floors of the school building. None of the buildings are fully ADA compliant, and it would bring significant costs to do that, or the viability of these options. They've all heard abbreviations. And as needed, we will engage with external consultants and partners to explore next steps and gather information. Next, please. And how can you help? We need your help. Talk to each other. Dispel any rumors you hear, because I know they're out there. I've heard them. Share constructive ideas with any council member, with Father John. There is a form going around, or it will be distributed, that you can fill out with ideas and comments and return, either today or take it with you, bring it back, put it in an envelope, and drop it in the collection basket. I will say on that form, it does ask for name. Any anonymous forms are not going to be considered. It could be a visitor, someone who has no skin in the game. Offer your time and talent to help us. We will likely be forming, as we continue to hone these plans, we'll likely be okay, I've been talking a lot today. We will likely be forming small, limited time work groups to address a specific topic. And we will be looking for people with the expertise for that. And that's a question on the form that you're going to be receiving. Do you have an area of interest that might be helpful to us? You can see the form also on our website, and you can always email Parish Council. We do have an email. Next, please. So what's our summary? Our current model, we all know it's not sustainable. 14 buildings, a lot of costs. Declining resources to meet these needs. And again, trying to be as transparent as possible, we've shared our best thinking about asking for your engagement to help us formulate a recommendation on how to move into the future. Next, please. That's a lot of information. I'm going to, Heather, there she is. This is being live streamed and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel for people who have not been able to who have not been able to attend one of these. So raise your hand if you have a question. Wait till Heather gets to you with a microphone so that it can be recorded. Thank you. Go ahead, Dale. It's on.
Will we be able to get a copy of this presentation?
We are putting together a summary of it. I personally am hesitant to put PowerPoints on any website because you're not going to have the narrative is not there.
Got it.
So things can be taken completely out of context. But we will have a summary of this. We're working on it now. It's going to take a week or so.
All right. So that my second question was, when we first configured years ago, there were 4 parishes. Our Lady of Victory was part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And the bishop said that they could stay as a separate entity as long as Father Antinarelli ran the parish. Now, that was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems that we could make these great decisions, and then 3 years later, all of a sudden, Our Lady of Victory gets thrown in our lap, and then what do you do? And maybe you would have made a difference. That's it. That's just my comment. You don't even have to respond.
Thank you. Thank you. Other comments, questions? Don't be shy. Behind you. I'm sorry, the sunlight's in my eyes, so I can't see very well.
When Sacred Heart combined with Holy Rosary and Precious Blood, yeah, then they were called the Cathedral Community. And then there was just one church that everybody, even though there were 3 sites, everyone donated to just one church. And maybe more significantly, there was only one bishop's appeal. And I was just wondering if, in the meantime, while you're trying to figure this out, would it be impossible to just call us as a church, the Southeast Area Community, and then we wouldn't have separate, we would have collections in church,
Mm-hmm.
but it would all be going into just one pot instead of trying to, okay.
Yeah, we can't do that until the bankruptcy is resolved. Otherwise, whatever the new entity would share all the liabilities from the existing ones, and we don't know how that's all going to work out. For example, St. Mary's doesn't have any claims against it. St. Boniface and Blessed Sacrament do. So we don't know if it's going to actually be worked out the way we're hoping it's going to be worked out. But ostensibly, if it doesn't, they could pursue all of these matters in state court and bankrupt the parishes. And so if we were to combine them all together, we would bankrupt the new entity. So you want to resolve all those claims before you bring them all together into one entity.
Did I read something about keeping all 3 churches, but every 3 months changing where the Mass would be? So for a lot of the time, 2 churches would be needing less heat, air conditioning, etc. Did I read that someplace?
That idea, I don't recall if it actually was in writing, but that idea was floated.
Okay.
And we just thought, you're going to go to the wrong church. We're not really pursuing that as rotating 3 months at each church.
Okay.
Oh, was it?
Oh, is that where
Right.
it was? Okay.
But we're not truly pursuing it at this time.
I think what that was trying to be an example of is people thinking outside of the box. And it sounds reasonable, but then when you start thinking about you're still going to have to insure the building even if you aren't using it, and your insurance will go up because you're not using it. Unoccupied buildings, the insurance goes up because there's not someone there looking after the building day in, day out. You're still paying insurance, you're still having to heat it to a certain degree. If there's a security system, you're having to pay for that. And so yes, there could be some savings, but I'm not sure that's a solution that's going to get us out of the problem we're in.
Mm. Thank you. Oh, one in the back.
I noticed when you said the benefits of having one church only would be to take a lot of stress off the pastor, travel-wise and using his...
Staff-wise, yep.
But that benefit or disadvantage got lost in two churches. You didn't mention that that was a benefit. That if he had only two churches to go to, that would be a benefit. Some of us have read something, and I'll say his name because a lot of us got an email from Jim Hardy, who reminded all of us that we are people, not buildings, and that we greatly treasure Father John's ability to be our pastor, and he's in his car so much that he can't be maybe the pastor he wished he was. I just wondered why that element disappeared as your presentation went forward.
Yep, it's still going between two different campuses. And with with a two church, and we haven't worked this out, there may be more masses than in a one church scenario. So it would still put some stress on our pastor and the staff to have to travel between campuses, cover the masses, find subs when Father John wants to take a well-deserved day off. So it is still an issue. Not as bad as 3, but I wouldn't call it necessarily a benefit.
You know, some of what's presented here, the benefits and the drawbacks were drawn up by the subgroup that proposed this option. You know, and so were they all, you know, uniformly analyzed against one another and brought together? Probably not. But we felt it important, or the parish council felt it important to bring what they had to the larger community to get your input. So yeah, there's lots of ways you could probably say, well, that should apply here and that should apply there, and.
Mm-hmm. Okay, hold on. Yeah, here and then Tom.
I heard what Father John said. I'm still going to do what's not there. On the one church solution, it doesn't talk about the disadvantage of not having a city presence. And this is where young people are moving, also senior citizens, and that's where the growth in our church is going to come. And so I think that's just a disadvantage of closing St. Mary's.
Thank you. Tom?
I'm always determined not to say
Tom,
anything,
last week
but I have an awful hard time.
You told me last week you weren't going to say anything.
I'm sorry, and this is my second week too. A few things. I hope you got some time. No, I'm kidding.
Hold the mic up, please. I can't hear you.
Let's see. Number one, think of the overall. We've been so concentrating on brick and mortar.
You need to hold the microphone
mic.
to your
All right,
mouth,
think-
otherwise they're not going to hear you.
Down?
No,
No,
up.
no, just get it up and point
Right
it at your
I'm
mouth.
sorry.
Yeah.
Think what we really want to do. You know, I exercise out near Guardian Angels, or it's what is that? St. Marian Cope now on East Henrietta, one of the homeliest campuses on earth. You know, it's a suburban, modern, 1950. But you know what they've got there is probably what we really should be looking at. It's handicapped accessible. You can drop off parishioners under canopies. You're one story in. Sometimes maybe the committee needs to look, what do we really want in the year 2050? Gorgeous structures that are like museum pieces, or where humans can interact and all. And speaking of interacting, you know, you've got a wonderful community center, and it's called St. Boniface Church. And the church itself, built in the late 50s, no pillars, no supports, quite a grand space. If you go to St. Charles Borromeo or St. Monica's, their athletic spaces are their original sanctuary, actually, and then they built beyond in their heydays of the 50s and all that. So that's a little out of the box. Don't forget that you've got the Boniface campus. Maybe that's going to become your new community center. Our ministries, the wonderful Nix to New, which was originally there to support the supper program. Who knows? That's an aging population that's trying to run that. It's physically a big challenge. It's a lot of work, and you've got elderly trying to do that. Supper program, there might be other areas to do that, or you could always rent space. Don't let those ministries bog you down, because we could rent. Maybe they'll just go away in a few years. And that lease on the school, a 5-year lease in the world of real estate is a short-term lease. Don't hang your hat on that either. Certainly stare at economic and what looks good today. And I do stand in this facility. I've been here 40 years. We've spent quite a bit over the years to make it handicapped accessible, to create a more open, modern space. And you know what? As a result of the physical, we've created a community that is somewhat unique to the other two. We really are a human-oriented, social. We can talk to people. We're not barred by vestibules and all of that. And there was one more thing I want to say. Oh, yes, you go back to Blessed Sacrament. Do we want just an asphalt campus, truly? Is that our love, is just lots and lots of asphalt? Or have we looked at our gardens and greenery in Washington Square Park? And again, I'm not just advocating for St. Mary's. Yes, I'd like to have convenient parking. And I used to always park in the Blue Cross garage. We have ample, and you know, Amy, and Parish Council needs to recognize you count the number of available spaces, we're probably in better shape than the other two. Boniface has very little. It's mostly on street. But if you want asphalt, let's go to Blessed Sacrament. If you want some greenery, let's consider here. And others. I'm willing to keep the others. And last week I brought up about some of the social issues on Monroe Ave and the area over there. And believe it or not, gang, while we were in the church, apparently 1 or 2 cars were stolen. And I'm not trying to fearmonger. That's just a reality. Put our whole parish there. You know you're going to get a lot of people saying, no way, because you're in the news all the time. Monroe and Goodman, Monroe and Oxford. There's some situations that have got to be resolved before you invest $2 million over there. All right, I'm done.
Just to build on that, the cars that were stolen were both Hyundais, which are getting stolen from everywhere. And in fact, that the very next day, someone tried to steal a Kia out of St. Boniface lot. The car had been revamped to prevent that from happening, but they still destroyed the transmission in the process. And then on Thursday morning, 2 Hyundais were stolen out of St. Boniface lot. So, I think let's not mistake a certain, phenomena happening through TikTok and social media where people are stealing cars to think that all our cars are susceptible.
Okay, so you got one over here, and then Diane.
Amy, I wanted to check to see, I heard mentioned the delay that might be because of regulatory things with the city, maybe the state. But we started any discussions with the city at all? Because our interest may in some instances be in line with what the city wants to do in terms of development, particularly housing, because the state is putting them under great pressure to build additional affordable housing. So there may be opportunities that we have. If we haven't done that, I would suggest that we begin some discussions with the city without even having a firm idea, just to say we may have available real estate if you can help us.
Yeah, we haven't reached out to the city yet. We didn't feel we were quite prepared to do that, but someone reached out to us or to Father John, right? Someone from was it the county?
Yeah. So there's groups have heard that we're talking about what are we going to do with our properties, and so there's other churches that have sold off their convent or given it to be repurposed for affordable housing. Things like that. So people are interested in that, but is it going to get us millions? Probably not. But yes, I think that's why there was a slide mentioning that the Cabot Group saw the rectory and the Blessed Sacrament is strong possibilities for redevelopment for multi-family housing. Something along the lines that you're suggesting.
Diane over here.
First of all, thank you for all your hard work. It's been going on for years. I just have a couple of questions. It's such a hard balance to keep, between the people and the finances. And in your finances, did you include the cost of, like in each scenario, like the demolition of the proposed rectory, or like the demolition or the handicap expenses?
No.
In those, okay.
We were using the existing capital costs, the numbers we currently have, to do that. And as we get closer into kind of focusing our efforts is when I think that would be the the
'Cause I
time to
think
take those kinds of
It
steps.
would be interesting to see like what it would cost to keep each campus, you know, like, projecting it'd have to be handicap accessible.
Right.
And was there any thought in, if it went to one or two, like what the attrition would be, like the cost of, like there's always a change when you change like that?
Yeah, I don't, did we come up with like a third? You're talking parishers
I mean,
leaving?
I think we would need, that's a question we need to look at, and I think, the diocese might be helpful to a certain extent. Just sort of on a, I don't know if this was actually done on a statistical level, but when they did combine Sacred Heart with Holy Rosary Most Precious Blood, about a third of the people from the other two campuses came to the cathedral. Another third were like, no, we're gone.
Right.
And the other third was sort of in the middle to be caught. Were you going to have something that was attractive enough to keep them there? So yeah, you're anytime you make any changes, you're bound to get attrition. But to think that you're going to avoid those changes from happening, I hate to tell you, it's going to happen. And I think the choice is: are you going to do the work and come up with a scenario that you feel comfortable projecting into the future, or are you going to let the diocese tell you that, sorry, no priest and time to close your church because you don't have money? That's essentially what St. Christopher's was told. They didn't have the money to put a boiler in their church, so they sold their rectory, and now the priest is living at St. John's in Spencerport. St. Michael's, the diocese was sort of pushing them to offload that campus. They've gone a different route and looked at bringing in various ministries to make the campus viable. But it's sort of like, are you going to wait around until your hand is forced, or are you going to start looking at what you can do to really create a positive direction for these churches, these communities?
Right. No, I agree, it needs to be done. It's just like there's more.
There is much more to consider, absolutely. But we don't want to go too far down the road and then find out that, we're going to lose everybody. We're trying to keep everyone informed of what we're working on and what we're looking at, and get the feedback and the ideas, like, have you looked at this? Oh, good idea. All right. Other questions or comments? Oh, up here, Heather.
I was just curious if you actually have any anticipated timeline for reaching a conclusion. Is this a 1-year project, a 3-year project? Just wondering.
Yeah. Well, I got 2 more years on council, so I'm hoping it's done. No, I'm kidding. We'd like to have a recommendation to Father, I don't know, within a year. Is it going to, don't quote me on that, because it may or may not happen. Right now, we're really working on doing our due diligence to make sure we're coming up with the best scenario that we can. And we're not going to rush through the process to meet a deadline. Anybody else? Oh, over here.
Real quickly, I just want to piggyback on the downtown presence. Having been someone who worked downtown and regularly went to Mass at 12:10 at St. Mary's, it was really nice to have someplace to go to church. Now, I know if St. Mary's isn't here, people could go to Our Lady of Victory, but
Yeah, hold the mic right
so,
up.
so I just thought it would be good to have a downtown presence, just because I used to use it, but if St. Mary's goes away, you still have Our Lady of Victory. So, that goes back to my original point about including Our Lady of Victory decision. So that's it. That's
Right. The comment was about the 12:10 Mass, and that it is convenient for people who live or work downtown to attend.
Yeah, so we have to remember the number of people working downtown is not the same. There's not the workers in Xerox Tower and Chase Tower and Bausch & Lomb Tower that there were before. They're all in the process of being converted into, living. Xerox Tower, they converted, they, moved hundreds of students in there. And so I asked Andy Galena, who's the developer, can we get over there and let them know of our presence here? We're right, essentially across the street here. And he said to me, I don't know if that's your population because most of them are from China and they're not Christian, they're not Catholic. There's a lot that's changing downtown, and we don't know where it's going. Yes, the 1210 was a dynamic place when you had hundreds of people working in these offices, thousands of people working in these offices. It's not necessarily that way. Yes, when we have a holy day, like Ash Wednesday, the biggest congregation we had was here at St. Mary's for the 1210, but it's not that way during the week.
Me again.
You, Tom.
What was I going to say? There used to be pastoral administrators. Now we have the fear of one pastor running all over Monroe County. So be it. I think pastors should maybe administer the sacraments, etc., and get back to the litany of pastoral administrators, our deacons, our lay staff, our women, our married people, that we can run this church beyond our ordained ministry to. So that, and maybe a new bishop will bring something there, but do keep that in your ideas and plans as you're stirring, that our future may not be as gloomy as if we can have some more enlightened processes.
Sadly, that's out of our control. But no. Where did you get the microphone?
I just want to say something. I work for the church in Fairport. Two parishes one is huge. One has 2,500 families. At one time, pre-COVID, had a staff of 12. There's 4 of us now that do what the staff of 12 used to do. We've had a job opening for 4 years now that we can't fill. And that's, from my experience with the diocese, that's pretty common. Father John, can you talk about,
So, there's lots of things going on. To Tom's point, I think when the diocese had a much more open and positive attitude toward lay leadership, lay involvement, a lot more people were attractive to employment in the church. Now that isn't the case. So are they less inclined to be employed? Yes, we could have a bunch of churches run by lay folks or deacons. That doesn't multiply the number of masses that you can have. So, yes, that's, it's a possibility. But that's not even a decision that necessarily can be made on a local level. Yes, Bishop Clark was pushing that, but people still wanted a mass. And as wonderful and dynamic as lay-led parishes were, don't think any of them showed dramatic growth as a result of lay leadership. I think it worked, it was positive in a lot of ways. I'm not trashing it, but I don't necessarily know if that's the automatic solution to our situation that we're facing. I will say this, though, we need to think about whether we're right-sized for the number of Catholics in our diocese. So a number of years ago, I went to an ordination in Dallas, Texas. They claimed to have 1 million Catholics. They had 60 parishes. At the same time, we claimed to have a third of that, about 330,000 Catholics. We had over 100 parishes. So people will say to me, well, Father, down in Florida where I go, or down, where I went to visit so-and-so, they've got this church and it's got all these priests and everything. Well, if we were to use that same proportion, right, that 1 million Catholics, you need 60 parishes, we have a third of that, so we need 20 parishes, 20 churches. I don't think anyone wants to go that dramatic, but, I think some of it is we need to be realistic about where we're going with our buildings and what's possible in the current situation. It'd be, I think the church really needs to rethink all male celibate clergy, but it's not there yet. And, I think the current Pope is trying to push that, but, it's not receiving a lot of support throughout the world. Whether that, somehow flips and changes, we don't know. So we have to deal with the reality of the situation we're facing right now in terms of what we can do. I'm not averse to, having more lay people help us, run things. But I think as Liz is saying, it's not like there's 50 people out there looking for church jobs. We don't pay a lot of money. Try to do what we can, but that's not, it's not necessarily an attractive option for someone who wants to raise a family, to sort of survive on a church salary. So there's a lot of factors there, but we have to deal with the limitations, the situation we currently face, and try to do as much positive planning for our future as we can within the situation as we see it. We don't know what's going to happen with the next bishop who comes. They got new bishops in Buffalo and Albany, and the bishop just decided we're going to have clusters of parishes, families of parishes. So he just went around parishes, so suddenly you had, 6, 7, 8 churches, you're in a parish. He asked for all his pastors to resign and reapply to head up these big clusters. So they went from, I think 130 flow down to 35. I think Albany, they had fewer parishes. I think they're down to 28 parishes with these clusters of churches. So I think that's something we're going to be looking at is further consolidation happening. It's already happened outside of Monroe County. Wayne County, there's 2 parishes. There's an east and a west for the whole county. So Father Felician, who is with us here, he's now got the east side of Wayne County. So his two associate cover, I think they had 7. I think they're down to 6 churches right now. But, I think we've been insulated from that phenomena here in Monroe County, but I think over the next 5 or 10 years, that reality is going to come to us. And I think what we're trying to do here is understand what we bring to the picture, what challenges we face in terms of our facilities, and try to be in a good position. So if a new bishop comes in and says, all right, now you're going to merge all these parishes, we know what we have to offer. We know what challenges we face in terms of being able to have a conversation and move forward in terms of what we need to do. I think if we sort of avoid these conversations and this hard work that we're doing, we're only going to end up in a situation where our hand's going to be forced, and we're not going to necessarily make the best or most positive choice in terms of sustaining the community and building a viable church that looks after people and isn't too focused on buildings.
Right. And in order to help, I have offered to say Mass for Father, but he has yet to take me up on that option. I don't know.
I've had a number of women offer that, and every time I say, here's an opportunity for you, I need somebody. Oh, no, Father, no.
Mario, we got a microphone here.
I think one thing we also forget is that people are not coming back to the church. And Father had brought up a book about the Eucharist. And now people are Zooming, which is great convenience. And then COVID kind of distanced us apart, and we're fearful of coming together. We've had these transitions, and I just want to add, yes, and it's good to be on Zoom, but I think Father had great sermons at times which said, invite people back. We probably wouldn't be having to think about this years down if we can just get people back into the church. People are fearful. People are not coming together to look at our ministries, and we try to look at that direction as well. Mm-hmm. And if we can focus on that, and like you said, it's beautiful green space, well, then come to the church. And you have a parking space, let's all come back to the church. And then we give in to whatever contributions as well. I think we'll continue to do well.
Thanks, Mario. Anyone else? All right. So in conclusion, thank you. Keep thinking. There are ideas out there, and you will never hear from me, that's a crazy idea. Sometimes they're the best. Keep thinking, stay engaged, ask questions. You can ask any of the council members, you can ask Father John, you can send us an email. There's many ways to get your questions asked. And most of all, thank you. Thank you for your time as we're traversing these waters, so to speak. So thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Amy, did the forms ever get distributed? Yes? Okay.
If you did fill out a form, feel free to just drop it up here and we'll take care of it.